Ever wonder what happened to Joe Walsh, the rock star with an epic music journey spanning 7 decades? He was a part of the James Gang, soared high with the Eagles, and even joined forces with Ringo Starr and his all-star band. As a solo artist and session maestro, he made music magic. In 2011, Rolling Stone hailed him as one of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time. But his personal life saw twists and turns that would leave you speechless. From sold-out arenas to personal battles, Joe Walsh's journey is a roller coaster of highs and lows. So let's take a closer look at Joe Walsh's journey through the years. Joe Walsh's journey began on November 20th, 1947 in Wichita, Kansas, where he was born. His father, Lieutenant Robert Newton Fiddler, was a flight instructor in the United States Air Force, but tragically, he lost his life in a plane crash in Okinawa on July 22nd, 1949. Joe's mother was a talented pianist with a mix of Scottish and German heritage. At the tender age of 5, Joe was adopted by his stepfather, and he took on his stepfather's last name while keeping Fiddler as his middle name. In the 1950s, it was common for kids to use their stepfather's name for official records like Social Security, school registration, and health records. Joe and his family lived in Columbus, Ohio for some time during his early years. When he turned 12, they relocated to the bustling city of New York. Later on, Joe moved to Montclair, New Jersey, and attended Montclair High School, where he even played the oboe in the school band. Joe got his first guitar when he was just 10 years old, and after learning to play the Ventures' hit Walk, Don't Run, he knew he wanted to make a career out of playing the guitar. Inspired by the Beatles' success, he stepped in as the bass player for the local band called the Nomads in Madison, New Jersey, marking the beginning of his rock music journey. After graduating from high school, Joe spent a short time at Kent State University. During this period, he played in various bands in the Cleveland, Ohio area, including one called the Measles. They even recorded some songs that ended up on Ohio Express's album, like I Find I Think of You, and It's True, and Maybe. He initially aimed to major in English and minor in music. However, Joe experienced a life-altering event when he was present during the Kent State Massacre in 1970. This deeply affected him, leading him to reconsider his priorities. He decided that a degree wasn't worth it, so he dropped out of college to pursue his music career wholeheartedly. Later on, Joe joined the James Gang, a band that had lost its guitarist, Glenn Schwartz. Joe's friend recommended him, and after a tryout, he became part of the band. The James Gang initially had 5 members, but later continued as a trio, and Joe's exceptional rhythm playing and creative guitar riffs became a standout feature of the band's sound. In 1968, they signed with manager Mark Barger, who introduced them to producer Bill Szymczyk. This collaboration led to the release of their debut album, Your Album, in 1969. Their bassist changed a few times, but with the addition of Dale Peters, the James Gang hit their stride. Walsh's innovative guitar techniques, like hot-wiring his guitar pickups for a unique attack sound, became a signature part of the band's style. They had several minor hits, and quickly became a staple in the early album-oriented rock scene. As 1969 rolled on, the band's producer, Szymczyk, arranged for them to appear in the film Zachariah, featuring 2 James Gang songs. During the filming in Mexico, vocalist Kenny Weiss stepped in to allow Joe to focus on his guitar skills. By the time they returned, Joe had sold his Les Paul guitar to none other than Jimmy Page. Their next 2 albums, James Gang Rides Again, 1970, and Thirds, 1971, produced hits like Funk No. 49 and Walk Away. However, Walsh eventually grew dissatisfied with the band's direction, and the James Gang's lineup started to change. In December of 1971, after leaving the James Gang, Joe had a chance to join Humble Pie in England, but he decided to form his own band in Colorado called Barnstorm with drummer Joe Vitale and bassist Kenny Passarelli. They released 2 albums, Barnstorm, 1972, and The Smoker You Drink, The Player You Get, 1973, with the latter album marking their commercial breakthrough. In late 1974, Joe played slide guitar on Joe Vitale's debut solo album. And during this time, he continued to develop his own unique guitar style. 1975 brought a significant change in Joe's career when he was invited to join the Eagles, replacing Bernie Leadon. His arrival marked the band's evolution, and he contributed to their iconic album Hotel California, which was released in 1976. The album featured chart-topping hits like Hotel California and Life in the Fast Lane, and solidified Joe's place in the band. The Eagles continued their journey with Joe, releasing The Long Run in 1979, which included hits like Heartache Tonight and I Can't Tell You Why. However, by 1980, the band decided to part ways. Now, let's talk about Joe Walsh's solo music journey. Over the years, he has released a total of 12 solo studio albums. In December of 1974, Joe released his very first solo album outside of the Barnstorm Project. This album, titled So What, was a departure from his previous work and featured introspective tracks like Help Me Through the Night and Song for Emma, a touching tribute to his daughter who tragically lost her life in a car accident earlier that year. Some familiar faces from the Eagles, such as Don Henley, Glenn Frey, and Randy Meisner, lent their backing vocals on a few tracks. Fast forward to March of 1976, and Joe treated his fans to a live album titled You Can't Argue with a Sick Mind, which also featured contributions from his Eagles bandmates. As the Eagles were facing challenges recording their next album after the massive success of Hotel California, Joe took the opportunity to reignite his solo career with the well-received album But Seriously, Folks, in May of 1978. One of the standout tracks from this album was Life's Been Good, a comedic take on the life of a rock star. This song became Joe's biggest solo hit, reaching number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. In 1979, Joe contributed the song In the City to the soundtrack of the movie The Warriors. This track was written and sung by Joe and would later be re-recorded for the Eagles' studio album The Long Run. Following the Eagles' breakup in July of 1980, Joe continued to release solo albums throughout the 1980s. Now, while these albums didn't match the commercial success of his earlier work, they still held their own in the music world. One of Joe's post-Eagles solo albums, titled There Goes the Neighborhood, reached number 20 on the Billboard 200 chart. This album featured the popular single A Life of Illusion, which became one of Joe's most beloved songs. In May of 1983, Joe released You Bought It, You Name It, an album that received mixed reviews from music critics. While it wasn't as successful as his previous work, it did feature the catchy track Space Age Whiz Kids, which celebrated the 1980s video arcade craze. The album featured a mix of hard rock songs like I Can Play That Rock and Roll and more introspective material like Class of '65. Joe's next album, The Confessor, saw the involvement of his girlfriend at the time, Stevie Nicks, and featured a cast of talented LA session musicians. This album marked a change in Joe's musical direction. In 1987, Joe released Got Any Gum?, which was produced by Terry Manning and included vocal contributions from J.D. Salter and Jimmy Jameson of Survivor. However, this album didn't reach the commercial heights of Joe's earlier solo efforts. In 1991, Joe released Ordinary Average Guy, his 9th solo studio album. The title track featured Ringo Starr and contributions from Joe Vitale, his former bandmate from Barnstorm. The album also included School Days, a track where Joe Vitale took the lead vocals. In 1992, Joe released Songs for a Dying Planet, his 10th solo studio album. This album aimed to re-establish Joe's musical reputation after some lukewarm reviews of his previous work. One notable track from this album was Vote for Me, which reached number 10 on the Hot Mainstream Rock Tracks chart. Fast forward to 2012, and Joe released the song One Day at a Time, which delved into his personal struggles with alcohol and drug addiction earlier in his career. This song was part of his album Analog Man, which hit the shelves on June 5th, 2012. The album was co-produced by Jeff Lynne, with Tommy Lee James co-writing some of the tracks. Despite his musical achievements, Joe Walsh grappled with personal battles throughout his life. He openly admitted to struggling with alcohol and drug addictions, which plagued him during his early career. His turning point came in 1994 when he woke up on an airplane to Paris, having blacked out. That moment compelled him to seek sobriety, a journey he's been on ever since. In addition to addiction, Joe has revealed that he deals with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, and Asperger's syndrome, shedding light on his personal struggles with mental health. Joe Walsh's personal life also saw its share of marriages, with 5 marriages in total. Notably, he married Marjorie Bach, sister of Barbara Bach and sister-in-law of Ringo Starr in 2008. Furthermore, like previously mentioned, Joe faced the heart-wrenching tragedy of losing his daughter, Emma Kristen, in a car accident when she was just shy of 3 years old. Throughout his life, Joe Walsh's music and personal journey have been combined with moments of both triumph and adversity, making him not only a rock and roll legend, but also a resilient individual who continues to inspire many. If you enjoyed this musical journey through Joe Walsh's life, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more engaging content about music history.